just having that's the issue. As we see it.
It happened.
Okay, so just taking a look at the agenda for tonight. First things first, we are going to be presenting our compensation structure. We'll go through that compensation structure, the proposed salary placement schedule. We'll also present vision. This is just sort of an update from since the last time we met. We've sort of changed our mind on one particular aspect of 7. We want to present that revision.
I passed mine down. She's gonna come get you. She's coming around. She's coming around. Yeah, come around. They go together. This plus A.
No, I'll explain. So it's a path. But there's just one sketch. And they let me know when y'all ready.
You need a section page here. Second page. We need one more second page. No second page, that's the first page.
Next time we
I hope not. Okay, we're ready.
We're ready. Okay, wonderful. All right, so this structure essentially goes with the offer that we've already brought forward. As if you remember, that offer was $4 million. And originally, we indicated that you guys would have the opportunity to tell us how you'd like to split it up. And then the last time we met, you indicated that you'd rather us come back with a proposal for how it would be split. And so this is what we've done. There are essentially two options, but each option has sort of a sub option associated with it. So I'll try and be super clear, but if you have questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer the questions as we go. Both for salary schedule. The salary schedule, as you can see, is basically, if you remember last year, we when we got to 47.5, we adjusted the salary schedule so that we had some differentiation between levels 1 and it was 17 at that point in time, but it was $100 difference. And the goal was to try and eliminate some of that compression that has occurred as a result of all of the increases that have been received in the last 5 years or so, associated with both the districts and the state's efforts to raise the base pay for teachers. Right? We had a lot. You'll remember a lot of individuals were stuck right there at the base because of the compression. So as we tried to spread those out last year, we put $100 difference between each level. This year, within the allotted funds that we have proposed, we have the ability to spread that out a little bit more and go with $200 between each level. So it's essentially adding an additional $100 to each level to spread it out. Additionally, as we move forward, the goal is to continue to spread it out so that we have a significant amount of differentiation between the levels. But it, obviously, you have to be able, from our perspective, you have to be able to do it within the funds that we have available to make that happen. So we felt like this was a pretty big step to spread it out as much as we could do this year, and then we'll look to do that again next year as forward. But we are not proposing a change to the base rate of pay of 47.5. So option A.
Real quick, the top of the middle column says 2023 annual.
Oh, I think
it's 24-25.
Yeah, I that's a copy paste. I'm sorry. That's my bad. I apologize. Wasn't focused as much on the header as I was on the information there below, so that's my mistake. All right, so going back to the proposal for 24-25, option A, there's two components of each proposal, and the components are a performance pay component that is essentially required by statute. This is based on last year's performance ratings. So in that component of a pay increase, we would offer $125 for every individual who is an annual contract and is rated highly effective, and then we would offer $100 for every individual who was effective as either annual contract or grandfathered highly effective and effective. So two numbers, the law for.
So 2023, 2024.
Correct.
Thank you.
Now, what we're going to call a retention payment, and this is a 2.88% at 47.7, right? That's what we would have brought them in this year at, right? So when we enact this new schedule, that individual teacher will be approximately $400 more than that, sorry, $200 more than that, and would need to be brought up to that new minimum, despite the fact that they're getting no pay increase for this year.
Okay, so let me just give you an example. It's my first year in Leon County. I've got 10 years of experience. I come in and drop in at year
10.
at year 10.
But
So would have had 48.5, and now you're gonna make it 49.5.
correct. So the rationale there is that an individual like that is coming in this year.
Yes.
They have not, so they've already received their placement at 10 years.
Yes.
And so really those individuals, with it being their first year within the district, we don't feel like they should be part of the pay increase, the retention pay for this year. Their first pay increase would be next year. But because they're at 48.5 instead of 48.5 instead of 49.5, we would move them up to the level in which they the minimum is. Make sense?
Yes.
Now, from there, as you can see, the total cost of that is $4,965,000. As you can see, the performance pay breakdown of that is it's about $231,000 for the performance pay aspect, and the retention pay is a little bit more than $3 million. Taxes, FICA taxes and FRS are approximately $700,000 of that. Okay. The one aspect that we talked about last week or last month was the parental leave aspect. And as we indicated at the time, if you guys decided that you wanted to go with the parental leave proposal, it would cost $535,000. And so in that case, if you decide to do it, this offer would change from 2.88% across the board to 2.475 across the board. That's basically the adjustment that has to be made in order to account for paying for the parental leave.
I have a question on the parental leave.
Yes, ma'am.
When you were looking at these numbers to factor in that $500,000 number, were those numbers pulled with parameters that were set in that contract language? So for example, right now you come up with the $500,000 number.
They were based on our current experience.
Okay.
And so yeah, we would expect that they may go down, but we don't know to what degree.
Would there be a point where you could pull that data? Is it possible to look at who took maternity leave in the last year that met the qualifications that were outlined in their parental leave proposal?
I mean, I think we could definitely pull the majority of the parameters and filter in and filter out who would be affected. So not all of them, to my knowledge.
Yeah, like I would have
if I'm remembering back to like exactly how many of them would be able to be filtered in or out, but we could definitely do that.
Okay.
We don't have it available right now, of course.
Obviously, yes.
Right.
So maybe I just need a point of clarification. So if 535,000 is based off of what if you don't know how many people it qualifies? Just trying the
Now
price tag.
The 535,000 was based on the average of the last 2 years actual experience of teachers taking maternity leave.
All teachers.
Yes.
So it doesn't
No.
necessarily cost 535,000 because
All
you don't know how many
teachers.
people apply because you have to have 5 years.
That's what I was just saying. Yes, there is.
Right.
It's possible that the parameters are not agreed upon yet. Right. So we propose parameters. We understand about what they would cost this would cost to implement, right? When we land on what the parameters are, obviously at that point in time, we'll be able to adjust for where we feel like we'll land. But where we stand right now, there's also aspects of it that are really just total shots in the dark because it also includes the paternity leave aspect that we don't currently have. And so the concern is that it's really just a shot in the dark projection that we don't have a lot of real data to back up. Okay, but we're proposed, we came to the table to negotiate it, and so this is what that process is. Okay,
Thank you for the clarification.
all right, and so the major difference between the first and the second options, option A and option B, is that option B includes a minimum of a $300 payment for everyone who is essentially at year zero. And it also still includes the adjustment to the base rates. Okay, so that adjustment causes for there to be a slight reduction in the percentage. It goes from 2.88 up to 2.83. And that would allow for basically those individuals who are at year zero to get a $300 payment for this year.
Okay, so that was gonna be my question. My first year in the district, just hired, everyone's getting their salary increases. I get $300.
Right.
So I would be at 47.5 plus 300, 47. Got it.
Well, and just to be clear though, we're not changing the base.
We're not, yeah, correct. We're not
We're-
changing the base, but that's how I would
But
add
that's
that
how we
in.
do it. So for like last year, everyone got at least 575 last year, and so this year they would get at least 300. Most individuals, everyone that is at 1 year and above is going to get that 2.88 or 2.83.
So how does that apply to somebody that gets hired after ratification under this plan?
No, they would get nothing.
They would just get 47.
They'll be at 47.5.
Okay, I just need to clarify.
Okay, I'm first year in Leon. I'm a year 10 teacher. I get what's on this as where I'm placed, plus then $300.
Yes.
Okay.
The
So it's about your years of experience in Leon,
actually
right?
it's so going back to that, they're
10?
getting at, I mean, I think I misunderstood your question. They're getting at least $300. So they're not getting the difference between, like, if that person is going to get $1,000, they're not going to get $1,000 plus 300. They're going to get at least 300 because in that case, I would say 95% of the individuals that are getting the salary schedule base adjustments are people that are first year teachers in Leon County who are just being brought up to the new minimum for their class, for their years of experience. Right.
So can this apply to people above like year 2 because it's $200?
Oh, yeah.
If you with the separation growing, it quickly becomes more than 300.
Yes.
Right.
So in most cases, those individuals are going to get more than 300.
Right.
There's a slot between like
Okay.
years, and don't quote me on this. I'll go back and look at my computer, but there's like years 22, 23, 24 where it's right about even. You know what I mean? But beyond that, most are getting the more than $300.
Okay, so let me go back to my example because I think that this is where we got lost in translation. I'm a year 10 teacher with 0 experience in Leon County Schools, so I'm hired. I'm placed on the year 10 line, but I was placed at the salary schedule that was ratified last year. So therefore, that's why my raise is $1,000 and whatever that may be. I'm a year 10 teacher and I'm hired in March. We've already ratified. I'm just placed on year 10. I'm not seeing $300.
Correct.
There we go. That was the
Sorry.
loss. No, you're good.
Did I miss that? Yeah.
I don't have the other salary schedule in front of me because can't get to it, but that was why.
And that's what you'll find is that those, for the most part, those individuals, it'll be individuals in that 22 to 22 and less years of experience range that are being impacted, and to varying degrees. The higher you go, closer to 22, probably the more they're going to get because those are the areas that are like moving the most in the current.
Okay. So
setting.
that
Is
Um,
there
That clarifies that.
any way that rather than hourly rate, like what it means? Because people are gonna want to be able to go, I'm year 13, this is what I'm getting, I'm year 23, this is what I'm getting. And I don't think that this really, like, it's gonna.
It does, so that's, I'm sorry, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just saying, like, is it possible to produce something like that so people know how it impacts them?
I can try. I think that's part of the issue. I noticed that whenever you did. And I'm not. I noticed that when you did this, okay, for Richard. And the problem with this is that this is using our placement schedule, not what people's actual salaries are. They don't align. So like this, and the reason I say that is because like this year, there's only $200 or whatever. It's like if we add the $200 to the placement schedule, there's $200 between years 3 and 4. But an individual who has 3 years of experience this year is going to get a raise that is way more than just that $200. It's going to be more in the range of a $1,500 raise, right? And so, and it's based on where they are currently, 2% of their current salary. So you can't really align it with where they are exactly on the salary schedule.
I understand not putting it in terms of exactly where it is in terms of a placement, in terms of incoming, but the issue is I have 22 years of service. So, okay.
So I think that that's where we're lacking overall is I've got 23 years of service. I don't even know what my base pay is to know what the 2.88% would impact it as. I think that that's where where people go and reference this chart or last chart or like, oh, I should be here, but it's not accurate because my raises have been non-reflective of that.
So just so everyone is, I mean, this, and
we talk about it,
this
but
is
Not
part
that it's not accurate. I want to say that
It's accurate.
correct.
Yes.
It's just you're referencing your current salary on a placement table, which doesn't belong to you because you work here already.
really
But you're new.
the only people that this would be considered right for would be someone that was hired this year
yes.
and placed on the schedule this year. Because
Right.
once you're placed on this schedule, it goes out the window. And if you're just getting the raises that you organically get through negotiations, right, each year. And they're in most cases, I think definitely within the last 5 years have been way more than any kind of step on a scale.
I think in regards to that, whether or not it's been more or less, I wouldn't know how to calculate what that raise looked like to know that it's been accurately applied to my salary because I don't know what the base salary is today right now for me.
Mhm.
Because when I go into Skyward, you can see it in a variety of different formats, but if you're looking at the year end, well, that's January through December, and a raise has happened during that time, so it's not.
I understand that there are a lot of barriers at times to people being able to understand clearly what Skyward says in terms of what their pay is. I think that what we could do is definitely provide sort of everyone has access to it through their employee management screen, but they would just need to be looking at the right they look at their hourly rate and they multiply the hourly rate by the number of hours that that they're assigned. They can, so for instance, a person who's working 7.5 hours, their normal yearly number would be 1,470 hours. That's 7.5 times.
But when we sent out contracts last year that everybody has to sign on Skyward,
Yes.
doesn't that have their annual?
Yeah, but it's prorated.
Prorated.
It's prorated. That's the issue is that if you look at your even if you look at your contract, it's accurate if you're working 196 days, it shows you what your annual salary is. But if you're only working 180 days, you may think, well, I thought I was supposed to make at least 47.5. This only shows 40,000.
In addition to that, if you're an 8.5 hour person, it's already lumped into that big
Correct.
number, so you don't even have that 7.5.
What the contract does is basically take your assignment, which is how many hours you're supposed to work in the year, and multiply it by your hourly rate. And if you are not a full 196 days, then it's not going to show you a full annual picture. But what I could do is basically send out, clear instructions for how it can, how it can be computed
I'm gonna pull it up on my end on Skyward,
individually.
so we can see
Right.
where maybe the disconnection is. Yeah.
Or we could even, I mean, I'm just spitballing here. I mean, we want people to clearly understand what their sort of big picture annual rate would be, because I think most people, that's what they compare. They think that they're not worried about some, prorated, amount based on when they started this year. Now it's clear for people that have been here, they're working 196 days every single year because it's calculated for them. But we can probably even come up with a spreadsheet or something like that that would calculate the annual amount for every individual so they could see it. So, I mean, I don't think that would be too much work for us to do and put it out, especially if it will help clarify for the unit exactly where everyone stands.
Where are we on like the 18-factor authentication? It's like I'm logging into NASA every time. You want to get to something.
Yeah.
Bill's not here.
Where's that in the contract? All right, you want to do 7?
Yeah.
What's your question?
And the only other thing that I was going to say is that, the schedule amount, is built so that nothing changes with regard to it. It will just be our placement schedule moving forward. It's not a skep schedule. We will continue to do things the way that we've done. As it stands, I think just to be clear, I think that, the step plans in the past, when you generally have between $500 and $1,000 difference, it would be great to get to a point where we have that kind of differentiation on our schedule. But I think that in recent history, what we've been able to negotiate at the table is surpassing those amounts. That would have typically been on those step plans.
I think the benefit of both of those things is the step plan tells people, well, I'll at least have this if
I
I
get
stay,
you.
and then each year you can add on if you have additional funds. I just wanted to clarify, because retention payment, I like the phrasing of that. This is a permanent increase to
It
salary.
is.
This is not.
It's not a
one-time
bonus. It's
That's what
we're trying to stay in compliance with the
same with performance pay then.
Correct. It will technically be an add-on, which that's what we call it, as an add-on. It goes on top of your base pay.
Okay, so I'm looking at my check and it doesn't give me an hourly rate. It says just what.
Do you mind if I come around so I can just see what you're, because we have so much more that I don't know what
Sure.
you actually have.
She's probably looking at her pay stuff. Are you looking at your pay stuff?
You want to turn it around?
She's fine.
All right, so that out for me there. Let me just.
You get up to teach a lesson.
The information.
Got extra time during this.
Yeah.
So see, right, I can go to calendar year to date, but then that's January to December. You can go to write W-2, that's not gonna give it. So. Yeah, that's where I was just, where I pulled
It's
that
not
out.
like.
Yeah. It's 100% a function of the way that we pay based on our contract, as opposed to what would normally be in a system as an annual salary.
Yeah, but the problem is, we don't know what now.
Oh,
Per
sorry.
hour.
And that's, yeah, I get
Which
you.
one?
I'm trying to what I'm trying to do is find a way to make sure that we can get that information out
Right.
so that
that's what I
people,
was
so that
looking
it's
at.
clear.
Transparent.
Because you also, on the flip side of that, you would have individuals who, if we said, here's your annualized salary, and they're only actually
Yeah.
working 96 days
Right,
instead of,
because it's just giving me the lump
196
sum
days. So they say,
divided
well,
by.
I said I was gonna make
Yeah,
47,500.
instead of the hour, so it's
But
telling
that's
me
not
whatever the
really the
annual is
case.
divided
They're
by
getting a
this.
prorate.
Yeah, yeah, so that's why we
It's just
don't.
weird.
See, we have a little tab that we
You're-
plug into it here.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's
I'm like,
where-
I need that.
Yeah, no, that's why we don't
We
understand.
need to know what we're currently.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it would be good for everyone to be able to. Can we get them?
You gotta bring it back.
I think it would be good if we were able to give instructions because so that everyone can, everyone can go into Skyward and they can utilize the system the way it's intended and actually access the information in a way that they're going to understand. So if we can do that, and it will help everyone, if we can disseminate it, however it needs to be done, I think it's worth our while to do.
I understand, but I think if people get a 12-step process to figure out what it just needs to tell them what it is. It's just going through a 12-step process.
I'll be happy to make that recommendation whenever they do revisions to Skyward. Because, I think that we can do a report that will just tell them, right?
Right.
And it, clearly differentiate between projected annual and, what they're actually getting so that they can look and see. But I'm just saying that we can also, for for those individuals who are independent, want to be able to do it themselves, provide a little bit of an instruction sheet so they can go into the system and get it themselves. So,
Okay.
And if they want to use it, great. If they don't, understand. Our main thing is I would really like for people to understand exactly I hear that frustration.
Yes.
And, we want to make sure that we're responding to that frustration. 7, okay.
Are we focusing on all of 7 right now, or are you just gonna provide one section?
It's just a revision to our. Can you pass it?
Right now, I'm putting on one last.
This is just a one revision to the counter proposal that we put together last week. Specifically related to 7.14. Okay. So what we've done in this situation is basically have gone back and accepted the language that you proposed, changing the 1 day per 9 weeks to 4 days per year. The only caveat is that we're proposing a limitation of no more than 2 days consecutive, right? Okay. So you can use them. You can use all 4 in a 9-week period if you like, but you can't use more than 2 days consecutively.
Okay.
So that's we felt like that. After consideration of the argument that you presented, we felt like that was in alignment, would help some of those ESE teachers with the busy times of year that they face.
Are we looking at?
All right, supplemental proposal.
No, are we looking at 7.16?
We're not. Just 7.14.
Okay.
Let's see, 7.16 is planning days. No. So one, it's just 7.14 right now.
Okay.
Well, I can't say this. We really strongly considered revising our counter proposal with regard to work from home. And the reason that we did not is that there are quite a few variables that we're really trying to track down. I mean, specifically, Tom, do you feel like you can speak?
Real quick.
So,
yeah.
Is this supposed to be crossed off still?
Which one?
It seems like you're allowing
It is a
allowing
counter.
it.
It just got rid of the request.
Well, and
Hold on a
they have to
second.
give the reasons.
Where are you referring back to?
7.16D is now unstriked. Unstrucken? De-strike.
One
I'm just gonna keep adding.
It's not.
De-stricken is not.
Does not have a strike.
Does not have a strikeout. It's unstricken.
That was
That's what you really meant?
That was not what I intended. So, I mean, I would even go, okay, so
Well,
this-
I mean,
Okay.
that was a
Very
Scrivener's
acceptable.
error when I was making these adjustments, they backed out. So,
more than.
so what I was saying, so I'll be happy I'll provide an updated version.
But so just strike that out is what you're saying.
Strike it,
So D,
yes.
just strike D. We don't need a bigger version.
Yes.
Tell us. We'll strike
Yes,
it.
just strike
Okay.
it. But, and what I'm explaining right now is related to that, right? So
Yes.
there are a lot of complicating issues associated with the work from home policy, right? And we are working through that. Some of that, I was going to let my attorney friend here mention some of the complications related to our workers' comp and liability associated with it. And I'll let him do that at this point in time. Todd?
Okay, if we did go forward with the work, we would have to have some parameters and probably have it pursuant to either a policy or procedure policy. There's a lot of debate about, a lot of insurers would recommend that if you do work from home, you have to designate your work spot. There's a famous case where an adjuster working for Florida, living in Arizona, got up at 5 a.m. and tripped over her dog. And if I remember the case correctly, they litigated whether that was a workers' comp claim. So there's issues like that when we don't control where you work at, that we have to work through.
Yeah. And so we say that to say that there's actually a discussion to be held at the upcoming agenda review regarding a policy related to work from home. So this is something that we're working out with the board, right? Trying to craft parameters that we can work within, but we just don't feel like we're at a point in time right now to be able to agree to language because there's so many different complicating factors. Do we think at some point in time we may be able to do that? Possibly. I can't commit to that, but we are actively working through a policy, at this point in time, and we hope to be able to nail those down. But we're at this point not able to respond to some.
So this language is from another contract, so how are they able to do this and we can't?
Well, it depends on their comfort level. They may have no
So you're
parameters, they
uncomfortable?
may have some.
No, it also I would also argue they have a policy.
There may also be
Yes.
a policy in place.
But it doesn't say per policy in the contract.
And
So
what I'm
regardless
saying
of
is
what
they
policy
have.
is, they still can, I guess.
Yeah, we are totally within our rights to agree to it at this point in time. We just do not feel comfortable because we don't have all of the parameters worked out. We don't have a comfort level. We don't have board support on a policy. So what we're saying is we need to get a little bit further down that road before we're able to agree to it.
Do you have any employees right now that are working from home?
Not on a long-term basis. We have a couple of people that are. We have a couple of people that are working not on a long-term basis, but it is not something that we have regular agreement where someone's indefinitely working from home.
Okay, would you consider this a long-term basis because it's going into the contract that it can be used on planning days, or would you consider these a one-off 4 times a year?
Anything that's going into the contract is essentially long-term. We can't ever get it out. And so our point is just, we want to make sure that we have the parameters of our agreement laid out and, and are comfortable with that agreement before we agree to something that we literally can never take out of a contract unilaterally.
Are you aware that there are employees currently working from home in a variety of capacities at random points during the year?
Yeah, I mean, there are times whenever, as part of an ADA accommodation or other types of situations, we have those kinds of things that come up, but we do not have, a situation where we are sitting there and allowing an individual to work every single day, long term from home.
I think our definition's a long-term.
There's only 11 days that this applies to. It's
That's
a
not the
lo-
question.
But your
No, but you're
liability is
saying-
already shot when you're letting anyone work from home, right? And so that's why it's like, all right, we've got this many people, this many instances. If we do one more, that's too much liability. I think that's what the vibe I'm feeling is.
The response really is, we want to make sure, so. As I indicated to you. We understand the limited capacity or the limited nature of planning days for teachers. All right. But, and you're right, I agree, 100, we, as a group, we agree, it's a limited number of days. We're not arguing that. What we're arguing is that we need to have a system that is developed and is well thought out and is in place before we agree to language in a contract that we're going to be tied to forever. And so what we're saying is right now, we need to be able to work in conjunction with the board to develop the parameters. Once we know how we want to administer a program, you know, do we want to administer a program that is doing these types of accommodations strictly for ADA purposes? Or do we want to have a more liberal program that allows for people to work from home on paid days off? I mean, or sorry, not paid days, on planning days. And so those are the kinds of things that we have to work with the board to develop in order to come back to the table and say, yes or no, we're going to agree with the LCTA to allow teachers to work from home on planning days. Now, I will say that, we've had a lot of conversation around this issue, and we talked about it with our principals. And to be honest, we're not aware of any principals that are taking names in the parking lots on planning days. You know what I mean? There's just not an off. At least that's what they're telling us.
Would you like names?
No, I don't. I definitely don't want names. But I mean,
No, he
You
meant
get
the
what-
principals,
meant the
I think,
principals.
not the teachers. And usually,
Okay, if you-
usually you do
well,
want names,
yeah.
right? So you can talk about.
you know what, Scott, like we always, specifics are always great. You know what I mean? So like when we're talking about our administration of the contract, if you see situations where we have administrators who are being unreasonable, we want to know about that, right? But we don't see this being a major issue. I mean, even one of the principals that we were talking to, like, hey, we're working with the teachers on a regular basis. We don't really see anything broken here. Why are we looking to change it? And our response is we're just trying to work collaboratively with the LCTA to come up with a process that works. And so where we're at right now is we need to be able to sort of set the board's expectation, or have the board help set our expectations for policy and work more collaboratively.
I know, but we're negotiating, which doesn't involve the board other than their approval of what happens here. There's a couple of things that are a little concerning. It's the idea of long-term and short-term, and we're talking about 11 days, which negates long-term. Then it's uncomfortable is how you feel based off of what seems to be liability. But then there could be a counter that basically just says teachers may work remotely, contract days upon mutual agreement of the site administrator. Employees shall not be able to participate in workman's comp while working from home, etc. I don't know. It seemed, I'm not saying that there, I mean, you may have an answer to that, but to not have a counter or something, I don't know what the policy is going to outline so much that we can't take that and just put it here.
It's impermissible under Florida law to ask somebody to waive their workers' comp. So that's why we need parameters.
Right.
Okay,
So, yeah, that's,
so it's still gonna be in place then. So then,
Yes, it would
so
be,
then all it is workman comp only applies from the time that you're actually on the clock that your regular work day.
that
And
might
we
be,
can put that right there.
that might be one of the parameters, but there's also with us not knowing the environment we're working in, we would have to have some discussion. It couldn't, I would not recommend to the board no parameters on that issue.
Okay,
They might say, we're fine with just the working hours.
I mean-
That happens.
And it just goes back to, on the surface, it appears pretty straightforward. You know, we've got 11 planning days, and why not just allow it to happen? You know, but as we started to dig into it, the detail that is required when you're developing an approach to this kind of thing is just a lot more than you ever really think about. And so we're not saying that like we've proposed our response, right? Are we saying that this is our response forever? No, but we feel like that's where we are right now. We need to get a little bit further down the road with our policy, work some of those deals out, and we can come back to the table at a later date and discuss it.
Do you have an idea of what the timeline is like for that? Because, you
For the
know,
policy.
yeah.
We are workshopping the policy on Monday.
So do you think this could be bargainable? When you envision this being bargainable? Yes. You can set any size error bar you want on the numbers.
We are workshopping on Monday. It is not being added to the agenda on Tuesday, yet for advertisement. But usually, after we workshop it, the board provides us any recommendations or whatever. We bring it back for advertisement. So we're looking at around perhaps January, February, the time period, if the board
Okay,
chooses
so in
to
terms
go
of
into
like
that direction.
a week,
Right.
a month, 6 months, a year, we're looking at like multiple months.
Yes,
Correct.
but it's not years out.
No,
That's
it's
why
in
I'm
the
asking you to
near
put down,
future,
and it won't be
right?
a week. It
No.
won't be a year, it
Right,
won't be a
right.
week. It's gonna be
Just
like
keep in mind that it take, so like the advertisement process, it's a,
It's, right, we're required.
That's why I'm asking.
Right.
I know you have lots of requirements, so it's a
Right,
couple months,
for-
that was my question.
In
Right.
the southern, I'll be there in a minute.
2.4
Right.
months, exactly.
Right.
That's all I have.
But we-
Do you have any-
but
The advertisement period for a policy is 28 days. Usually, because our board meetings are scheduled 2 weeks apart, usually we do more. But the minimum requirement is 28 days.
and of course, the purpose for that is to allow for people to have public comment and to, put in their 2 cents related to a policy. So we just have to get to a point where we feel like we can, comfortably set the parameters around this issue. All right,
Right, wanna move to A? Or,
B.
yeah, B,
Sorry.
sorry, B.
I didn't hear you.
You wanna move to B?
Appendix B.
Appendix B, yeah.
That's my head. All right, so appendix B is gonna look a little bit different than it did when we last spoke, and that's because we've made some changes to try and account for structural concerns that we had in the way that it was being pushed forward, but also to correct some of the language to make it cohesive. Again, that's just, I was gonna wait now. To make it cohesive and align and eliminate some confusion when you look at the contract language. Okay.
We're ready. All right, go ahead.
Ready?
Yeah.
So as you can see, that just in the first part, the supplemental B language, this is really cleanup. As you can see, a lot of it's referring to that supplement base, how it was in 2017 and 18, it was 30,500, and then sort of indicating the caveat below that we changed it from 30,000 to 30,500, 33,550 in 22-23. Basically, just want to clear this out and say the supplement base is 33,550 at this point in time. If we change it again in the future, we'll cross it out, put the new supplement base in there. and it'll be straightforward. We will leave the language in there that indicates that the intent of the parties to continue to work on the supplemental base, to continue to try and raise that supplemental base until it's in alignment with the minimum for new teachers. That was the original design, was that it would align with that sort of base level. And so we know that it takes additional funding to be able to do that. We've raised it, like 2 years ago we raised it. We've actually we're doing some research right now to try and determine what it would cost us as a district to raise it again, but we've not proposed that at this point in time. So that's really just cleanup language. What we are looking to do is, this in E, it was particularly confusing because of we do have a longstanding practice of, we have academic sponsor money that it's like a lump sum percentage, right? So if you go back to what the actual appendix says, I think it's like 45% for academic coaches. And this says here that sponsors will get 4%. Well, in D, the language says the minimum amount of a supplement shall be 1%. And so it's just confusing. People look here and they see 4%. They don't recognize that the minimum amount should actually be 1%. So what we're doing is putting a range there that would stipulate, starting with director. Director is directly related to the changes that we made below, changing it from 12 to 15%. But of course, it is designated based on the role, okay, within the appendix. But does allow for some directors, and this is specifically related to the performing arts programs directors, to be at 12% as opposed to 15%. The reason for that is we recognize that there's varying amounts of extracurricular time involved in some of these programs, right? The amount of time spent, particularly we recognize with the band directors and some of the others is extreme, right?
So what would a band director now be?
They're 15.
They're at
They're
15
15,
now, so
yeah.
they would stay.
Nothing changed. Like, we're not proposing any changes to what a band director is now.
Okay.
The only changes that we're proposing to the actual numbers are the adding of these programs. So you guys had originally
Okay.
They're all under 15%.
correct,
So this.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is
Yeah.
not changing.
and that's not changing unless it's specific. Yeah. Unless it's specifically crossing through an amount that's currently there, which that would be for academic coaches. That's the only one we're changing, right? We're not changing the others. We're just adding to them, adding to the list of sponsors so that we're clearly articulating that these people will get this. And the goal here is to say, because we do all recognize that there's places where they have steel drum and there's places they don't have steel drum. There's places that have robust guitar programs and there's places that don't have guitar programs. And there's places that have orchestra or strings and other places that have nothing like that. So what we've tried to do is really identify those individual supplements that are available. And if they're not available at that school, we just don't pay them, right? But if they are available at school, then we know particularly that they're going to get 12%. And then I believe that this is in line with what our previous conversations had been about this issue. And if not, we're open to suggestions as well, because our goal here is to try and acquiesce on some of this and say, we see where you're coming from. All right. And we want to recognize that, some of this, should be captured in the contract. That's him. So as you can see, theater program director is 12%. Steel drum program director, 12%. Guitar program director, 12%. Other performing arts directors, and this would be the catch-all for those individuals, like those places like orchestra, or if they have some other one-off, but it would, to be clear, the requirements for those kinds of programs are set by the student activities guide, so it's like, and what's established at the school. So if the school has the program that meets the parameters for the guide, then we can pay this up. Okay. We would also be increasing academic coach from 45 to 49. And this is to, so like we're still below crossing through math competition sponsor. I know this is an ongoing issue, right? But the goal there is to try and add some additional capacity under the academic sponsors area, so that the math competition sponsor can be included in that broad distribution. Student activities for middle schools, similar, would include theater program director, steel drum protector, director, guitar program director, other arts programs director, right, at 8%. That's consistent with what the percentage is for middle schools. Accordingly, academic coach sponsors for middle schools are being raised from 36% to 40%. In alignment with what we had proposed last session, the agriculture sponsor is still going to be proposed at 4%, but we did stipulate as a revision that those individuals, agriculture programs that require ongoing care of animals, once again, this would have to be as designated and sort of signed off on by the student activities director as a program, can be eligible for an additional 4% because they're taking care of animals and whatnot year round, right? But the idea there is that we don't want just a program to add a rabbit just so they can get the 4%, right? That's not that it would necessarily happen, but there are parameters that would go into getting that additional amount.
So like a job description. Right?
More like a program description that's outlined in the student activities guide.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you have an example of what that is for these?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a student activities guide, and Dr. Bolden is in the process of updating the parameters. If we agree to this language, then the parameters would be updated in that guide. The main thing is that it's, without speaking too specifically, because once again, that the parameters need to be developed, right? But it needs to be a comprehensive program. It needs to be a year-round program. Yeah. In addition, we're in agreement to add PTO coordinator, site coordinator. We previously agreed to STEM chair, EVI's chair, all at 4%. We remain in agreement with regard to renaming the site facilitator and creating a 4% supplement for the shared decision-making council facilitator. And so that sort of wraps up the revisions that we're putting forward at this point in time related to the appendix B. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, for example, all of these positions have something within the activities clarifying the job descriptions, what they need to do in order to get something.
I don't have a copy of the activities guide now.
I was just asking.
But yes, I mean, I think that's what we would be trying to do is essentially establish the parameters for the program, which is the responsibility of the district to establish those parameters and clearly articulate what the parameters for those programs are to the schools so that they know the bar that has been set for an individual program. And it really just goes into how robust the program is. And the goal here is to be able to obviously recognize individuals who are spending an awful lot of time doing these things, as opposed to those that are, mostly accomplishing their tasks during their normal periods of the day. And may have, you know, a once a month meeting, you know what I mean? Because you obviously, I think it's only fair that we would recognize those individuals that are having to do something every day, every week, spending hours upon time, versus those that are doing.
Understood. I think that, from our perspective, it's a waiver when it's written somewhere else and can be modified without, you know, like 4% and then the job changes, however it does.
I understand.
And so really, quite honestly, that document should be folded within the contract, so we know what the expectations of 4% is, or 12% and those types of things. So, you know, when Dr. Bolton gets done with what those outlines are and everything, just be prepared for full book that that's something that we want to make sure that we address.
Like I said, I mean, I think that is one of those things that is within the purview of the district, right? And
Unless
so
it's
setting the program up and what it entails, you know, falls on the district.
If it's a job description and it does get compensated through the contract, though, would you agree that we both have a vested interest in making sure that?
I believe that the terms and conditions of employment should be negotiated. That's what I would agree. And I think that we're doing that here in terms of compensation levels. And, you know, I think that it's different defining, you know, the parameters of the program. And but noted, and I mean, sure, we're happy to discuss anything that we do feel like. And you know, as we go through and we develop it, we're happy to discuss any of it, right? And whether or not it is, you know, a term is a condition of employment, compensation, those kinds of things that applies, you know, we'll have the discussion. So just be clear. So that sort of wraps up where we are with regard to the supplement proposal revision.
You want to caucus?
Yeah, that'd probably be good.
Caucus?
Do you have a timeline?
Yeah, no,
Maybe
you wanted to
about the, would be nice
Do
to
we
be
want to do
updated.
I thought that's the good question.
Yeah. Well, let's hold on. Let's see.
It's not as Joe doing. Board member, I think,
You want to do
yeah,
10?
it's been a little.
Yes. You want to do 10?
Well, I do know.
No.
So with regard to your question, you know, Dr. Bolden has taken over as the student activities director, right? And secondary director. And I think that in my conversations with him, he'll be here shortly
Wait,
to discuss it.
maybe we'll do 10. That way we,
You want to do 10 so you guys have something to talk about?
you want something to talk about?
I would say we probably need more like 20 minutes.
No.
That's what I
saying
Go
think.
over
Article 10.
I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
No. Do you want to do Article 10 so we get something to talk about?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Trying to give you.
Coming around.
Yeah. The only, hold on.
Yeah.
Color means nothing. Because you
Employee
must
authority and protection.
revision.
Employee authority and
Like legal
protection.
state laws, like, do you do that
It's
as
the
well?
discipline.
It's the
But
discipline.
I don't think none of them, I think they like change the color of the text and say.
I would-
underline.
Wait. Okay, wait, pause. Wait,
What?
hold on.
So based on where we're at, I feel so like the superintendent is planning to join us, right?
Yeah.
And before you guys go into your substantive proposals, which 10 is very in depth, I would prefer that we caucus now and wait for him to be here so we can hear it.
After I pass that out.
I didn't read it yet.
Relax.
Look away, shady. I didn't even have my glasses. Sorry.
We're gonna rewrite it right now.
I'm just saying, I mean.
Well,
I accepted most of what you proposed. And
yeah.
I accepted most of what you
That's the
proposed.
point.
And I have a couple.
We,
things.
we
Okay.
go here. That's what we had them set aside, or do you want to go? It's okay. All right, well, so. Go for 20 minutes right now. So come back at 6:30.
You wanna talk about 7?
Yeah, so then we'll go on to 7. In terms of 7. Yeah, thank you for taking a look at the idea of not doing it in 1 and 9 week. We know that there's times where there's more work that has to be done on IEPs, and one day isn't necessarily gonna cut it. So the ability to do at least 2 back to back is definitely gonna be helpful for our ESC teachers. We realize that doesn't necessarily address Article 8, where we were talking about, caseloads and things along those lines. But in terms of trying to get dedicated time to something, I think that's a positive step. When it comes to 716, I guess, if, the concern on the D part, we know that there's, it's not been accepted in the work remotely piece, and how things work at sites. But when it comes down to it, we had said, are there places where, these types of things happen? And I know there's been emails at times where even superintendent has said, hey, end of the day, you go ahead and take off, we appreciate all that you do. Or that there's something along the lines of, I know everyone is struggling to finish the line and is close, but please be mindful of the fact that you should work your contracted hours both on early release days and post planning days. You're welcome to take leave on early release days as well as planning days, as long as you get your stuff done. Parking lot was almost empty by 1:30 this afternoon. So I think in certain cases, like this example, there are places where principals are, for the most part, saying, just work what you gotta work, we trust you. And when we can't seem to have it across the board, this is where I think we have a little disagreement. The contract is supposed to be for every single employee. When one group or one site gets to have cotton candy, Sundays, and the other place gets a Tic Tac, there's disparity in terms of how things work. If one group, Title I, is in planning or let's say PD for the entire day and can't work on grades and planning and all that other stuff, but then another school is, you got all the time in the world, I trust you, you get your job done. What we're trying to do is make sure that there's some consistency with the work environment that people have. That if they are treated really well and respected and treated as professionals, they have it across the board. And when it comes to something like this, we think that this is something that is good for everybody and it doesn't cost the district anything. We understand you still need to go through some policy things and talk to the board. But again, the contract supersedes policy. We could do something now, but yet we want to go through some other process as well first, which means our bargaining, I can already tell you, will be confound, will be put right into whatever policy is. We're going to be asked to accept what the policy is rather than to be able to negotiate independently of that. And that's a concern because we should be able to work through that part now. But understandably, you guys feel a certain way about that part. And, you'll see 17 again. We've got some language that will pass to you that will kind of reinforce our position.
No, we'll look at that. Yeah.
You want to do salary?
Yeah, so in regards to salary. It's a proposal. Where we came in initially at 6 million, right? That was our first proposal, and we haven't provided a counter backing off that yet. We did some calculations during our caucus, and the amount that would be going into people's pockets monthly at a year 10 teacher was going to end up being somewhere around like $90. And we know that in today's economy, that's not getting us very far. I think we need to work on a salary proposal that we scrape the barrel, right? We've got to find some more money because what's happening to our teachers with 2-3 jobs, if they're a single income family, they cannot support themselves. Based on our survey that the bargaining unit had sent out, the results were overwhelming to, we need to focus on the salary, right? And we need to focus on salary increases that are in line with what the economy is doing. and where our teachers are at. And it was heartbreaking to read some of the responses from the teachers in this district. Facing homelessness, facing multiple jobs. They leave your school sites and then they go work at the Chili's or they go work at another place. At this point in time, we cannot accept this offer. We'll work on a counter proposal. But the overwhelming majority of our bargaining unit is struggling right now with their income and with what they can do with their income and what they're paying out in childcare and what they're paying out in their mortgages, or they don't even have a mortgage because they can't afford a home. So they're paying exorbitant amounts in rent. You know, the struggles out there are real right now for our teachers, and it's real easy to miss the struggles that your teachers are going through, because when you walk into their classrooms or you walk into a school building, they've got their game face on and they're doing the things that they need to do to get through the day, or they're sitting in this room right now and they're here to support their students and their livelihood. But this position is no longer paying for the livelihood of what's going on in the grocery stores, in your electric bills, in your everyday things, you know, rent increases, all of the things, right? And we're all subjected to those things, your side of the table and our side of the table. But our teachers are really feeling the pinch right now. And the once noble job, and everybody wanted to get into teaching, and it was supposed to be a career that could sustain you, is no longer sustainable. And so we really need to look at this salary piece a little bit more. Where can we develop more money for this? Where can we find more monies? And I know that we've heard from you all that this is where all the monies that you have to offer this year, but we need to look at some maybe other creative ways to figure out how to implement this better, so that way our teachers are at least making a living wage. I work 2 to 3 jobs, so I'm feeling that pinch, and I have a spouse that's able to contribute to my income. So I know what this is like, what this pay raise would equate to. And when all of your teachers are feeling the same sentiment and working multiple jobs, I think we're missing the mark here on this. And that's where we stand today on salary.
So do we talk back?
Yeah. You can. You're welcome to do that.
Welcome to the table.
All right.
You gotta whisper to Brett.
I'm like, yeah,
He will tell us. when
this
it's
is like really intense. I'm like, holy cow. I thought time I got back, I'd be finished, have all this wrapped up. I guess not. On the issue of supplements, I agree. I think we need to better define what qualifies for X percent, whether it's at elementary school or middle school or high school. We're committed to doing that. Dr. Bolden's committed to looking at our current practice. Before it was just band course. Those were the 2 big ones, 15%. And then those other programs didn't exist. Now we live in it, which is a good thing. We live in a different world with lots of other programs. And so we need to make sure whatever that percent is, that those things are happening after school, the number of students that are involved. But I think we can work to get that document revised that reflects the work that these people are doing after school hours with practices and performances. In regards to work from home, you say I can say this now, or I
You
can't?
can say it.
All right. So in regards from work to home, Scott, we're just not, we're not there right now. I mean, I know I hear you about the principals, and I think you're alluding that some principals may take roll on planning days and other principals don't. I never took roll. I never looked outside the window in my parking lot to see who was there and who wasn't there. I can tell you when I go to Montford on a planning day, there's one black car in that parking lot, and that car belongs to my wife. And everybody else is pretty much coming and going as they see fit, which is treating you like professionals that you are. And if you have things to do or there's PD happening and you need to be there, you need to be there. If you don't, then you don't. In lieu of that, what we can offer, or what I'm willing to offer, to codify 2 additional paid holidays. Right now in the contract, it says 6 paid holidays. We are willing to add 2 additional paid holidays in the contract, and then just kind of pause on the the planning day, work from home stuff until we can talk a little more through it. I know the board has been interested in having some type of work from home policy. I've been reluctant. Teachers every day come to school and do their job. Bus drivers every day drive their bus and pick up their kids. So I've kind of been hesitant to have a work from home policy that would apply ultimately for non-instructional staff more than it would for instructional staff. But we'll continue to look at it. But we are prepared to up the paid holidays from 6 to 8 in contract. When it comes to salaries, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. We need to pay our teachers more, but there's also only so much that we can do on Pensacola Street to help in that effort. At some point, the Florida legislature has to do their part. And with this $4 million proposal, with 50% basically coming from the governor's initiative and the other 50% coming from us, if I do my math correct, a first-year teacher making $47,500 would receive a $1,368 plus either $125 or $100 for highly effective or effective, meaning they would be making about $1,500 more than they are right now. So if they were making $47,500, they would go to $48,993 or just short of $49,000. For a veteran teacher that's currently in their 29th year at $40.82 an hour times the
Wait.
percent,
I'm sorry, which year are you looking at? Veteran teacher, what year? Just
year 29.
okay, thanks.
So they currently make $40.82 an hour. They would receive $1.17 an hour increase, or on a standard 7.5 day, $1,728 plus 125 would be $1,853. That same teacher, if you add, was making $33.21 in 2016, 2017. If that proposal is accepted, they will now be making $41.99 or an $8.78 increase, times 1,470 hours or 7.5 hour day, which is $12,906 more divided by 8 years is $1,613 on average per year. I agree. It's still not enough. But we are cutting our fund balance down to $10 million and have taken $2 million out of the emergency reserve for both our instructional and non-instructional people. The school board is, I'm just going to tell you guys, is not going to be able to come any further. We're just not. And we can go back and forth for the next month or 2 months or whatever, but talking them into going down to $10 million unrestricted plus $3 million emergency reserve takes us right at that 3%. And I wish we could do more, but I don't want the thought to be, well, yeah, they have all this money sitting out here and they're just not willing to give it. I promise you, if we had it, we would do more. All right. We just don't have it. At some point, the legislature has to step up.
So I understand, and I do believe that you want to do more. There are just some things that are questions that are hard to kind of process in that. Like when you look at the AFR, and last year, the projected fund balance went up $7 million above what it was projected to be at. And then that, things like that, and also knowing that there are unfilled positions instructional wise, that if you take those unfilled positions right now and base the average teacher pay, we're looking at like $3.7 million. And so there's the lapsed salary that goes right back into the fund balance that does not get calculated into what it is that we could actually afford for our teachers, that we don't even get to see on the backside, because that fund balance then goes to fill holes the next year in the district based off of whatever positions, whatever happens in terms of decision-making in the budget. So it's very hard for folks to think that like every single reimagine it, processing it differently, figuring out where the monies are. like, we can't even get split classes, which has a sub budget to go ahead and pay for people when they take split classes and stuff. And, but then that money doesn't get used. Especially in some of these places where there's been like a permanent sub for months.
But I
So-
think we talked a little bit about that before. And if we have situations where there's supposed to be 4 second grade teachers and they're not able to hire a 4th second grade teacher, right? And so 3 have to suck it up for them. That on a case by case basis, we would have that discussion about those individuals that are picking up for a position that's not filled. Or if there's an ESE teacher that's a unit that's out and these other 2 teachers are having to pick up for that unit that's not there to do that work, that we would be able to talk through that on a case by case basis to pay those people hourly in addition to it. But I'm just being brutally honest with you. The school board, they're not going to go any further. They're just not. I mean, and I'm willing that we may have gone too far. And it scares me to hear now that the Department of Education this year is only asking for a $50 increase per, to the BSA. That's very disturbing and very concerning. Part of me, when it talked about going back to a step increase in this and that, when I look at that same teacher over the last 8 years receiving on average over $1,600 per year, right? We never had steps like that in the past. Now I know things are changed. I know inflation's completely different. Lots of things have changed. Okay. But I promise you, I am doing everything I think I can do or we can do while also being financially responsible. I just do. And yeah, I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say.
We recognize that. It's hard that over the last 4 years, our state ranking has gone down every single year in average teacher pay for Leon County for the last 4 years.
Well, I question how that number is even derived, because last year, for some reason, we were number 5 in the state. I mean, so I really question, and I would challenge.
There's one anomaly here out of all the things. I mean,
Scott, we also talked about the fact that those numbers are not accurate prior to you going to the board. All right, the fact was, we knew that the language, what did not include, or the language, the numbers that the state did after the second session did not include the increase that we agreed to last year.
And I applied it to that, and that put us to 53 instead of 59. So it's still not great. So, I mean, there can be a rationale for everything. The issue is, at the end of the day, we are losing great educators. There are probably people in this room right now that are considering, should I even stick around, right? We have a me country right now where the service of these we people is growing less and less and less. And we're not doing even free things sometimes to go ahead and make sure that they stay in the classroom.
Even free things sometimes. What do you mean?
Like a work from home, it's free. I mean, that's a free thing. Like, there's just certain things that sometimes that don't cost much, really, at the end of the day. And so
I think okay.
So, no, but I'm just saying.
I mean, I can't imagine. I'm not going to try to say I feel your pain, because I don't. Okay. But at the same time, I promise you, I'm trying to do whatever I can humanly possible by also being responsible to this district, not to put us in financial peril, to give all of our employees, especially our teachers. I realize the challenges that we have. I realize that there's positions we can't fill. I know people are leaving the profession. All right. But if money's not there, I'm not sure what else I can do or what else the board can do.
So I guess the question is, are there any line items that allow for a board motion to transfer funds to go ahead and make sure that something does happen?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
That funds can be moved by board motions to go ahead and create additional funding from other spots. So the issue that really comes down to it is, and this is just a perception, that Leon County Schools everything is here, right? We want to do everything. But it's the same discussion we've had in the classroom. Not everything can be this important. Like everything, which is why the people feel micromanaged, because everything needs to be this important. So rather than saying, if we do these things and we treat people with respect, we're going to get the job done, we're doing a great job, and we'll get these other things, but they're not nearly as important as this. Everything seems to be is equally important in Leon County schools, especially budgetary wise. And then what is the last thing that is budgeted? The staff. And that is part of the concern that people have, is that they're the afterthought, not the forethought of, you know what, we're going to do a salary increase. It's going to be 5%. It's going to cost this much. Now let's figure out what else we can do. That's
It's not, and you've heard me say this a million times before. There's really three things that factor. One is things that these people need to do their job. It's instructional materials and supplies. Two is additional staff in our schools, the interventionists, additional teachers, paraprofessionals, all the supports that come with salaries. And then three is salaries. Those three things, and it's weighing. Those three things weigh on us. And so if you give more in salaries, then you have less people, and then some of those supports then have to go away. I mean, so there's a give and take to any of it. It's not that the salaries of our employees are at the bottom of the pecking order. They're not, but they're also these personnel needs in our schools. If we want to start cutting positions, cutting supports positions, and doing things like that to increase salaries, that's the only other way we can get there. And so it's in my mind, it's us prioritizing. What am I hearing? It's like those academic interventionists. We can cut the academic interventionists, but even I hear teachers saying how vitally important they are to doing pullouts and to pulling out and pushing in. I mean, it's either less people and more salary, or people and salary trying to balance each other. It's the same with caseloads. I mean, the only way to keep caseloads down is to hire additional people if we can hire them. And we fund our staffing plan like hopefully we'd have a teacher in every classroom. Do we right now still have some classrooms and paraprofessional positions that aren't filled? Yeah, but what if they were filled? And if we've already used that money and committed that money, then what happens?
what happens to the money when it doesn't get used.
Just what you said, it rolls back into the fund balance.
So like at the end of the school year, or the end of the fiscal year, right, which extends beyond the school year, there's a bunch of unfilled positions or lapsed salary, let's say hear out the discussion.
If I could, we've already discussed lap salary and we've told you that it's already factored into the budget. So it's not just all sitting in there.
No, point of clarification. Kathy said it's not factored into the budget. It rolls over into the fund balance. So if it's factored in the budget, that it becomes part of the fund balance.
It's factored in the budget on the front end, and then when it's left
That's what I'm
over at the
saying.
end, it rolls in the fund.
Correct.
Right, so it's factored into the budget, into the staffing plan, right? So like those 4 fourth grade teachers at Hartsfield Elementary School, right? Those 4 are funded into the budget. If one of them's not filled, then that salary at the end of the year would come back, correct?
Okay, so if that salary at the end of the year comes back and there's 50 of those positions, let's say, that don't get filled throughout the year. So you have 50 lap salary. Is there a desire to do a compensation structure to the teachers that are in the district at that point in time, splitting up that
But
funding?
what happens the next year if those positions are filled? And we've already then committed those salaries out, and then
I think what she's saying is.
Wouldn't
this is
that
just an
fiscal year
example.
close?
You're talking
But
about
it rolls
bonus,
into
like
them
it's an end-of-year
budget
bonus,
for
not a
next year.
recurring
Yeah.
salary.
It rolls in the budget the next year.
The
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
rolls into the budget into what?
So
Into
the
the-
fund balance that we used to negotiate with every other group.
So
And to allocate the
money that was
expenditures for the
supposed
next
to go
year.
to the instructional bargaining unit is then used to negotiate with the instructional party.
But I'll also argue that when we set up our staffing plan, we know we project for a certain level of absences. So that allows us to go a little bit higher in terms of what we can actually fund. So it's factored in to the staffing plan. It's all factored in. And there may be at the end something that squeaks through, but for the most part, they have accounting.
The concern I have is I can understand that you have a staffing budget, you don't spend it all, it's like $1 million or 2 million rolls over this year. So then next year you do whatever you do, another $1 million or 2 million, something like that. So at some point, you're like, okay, well, we're probably gonna have about this from the give and take every year, okay? But if you're planning for that now, you're planning to not hire a full staffing plan. That's my problem. And that means you're setting yourself up at the beginning of the year that if you do get a full staffing plan, oh no, we weren't prepared for that. That's a concern I have in all this discussion.
Still, we are planning like we would have a full staffing plan. We're not saying, we don't budget just 90% of the staffing plan. We budget 100% of the staffing plan.
Right.
Right, and then so then at the end of the year, is there opposition to at the end of the year, spending all that money back into the bargaining unit where it was originally allocated to? In some capacity. I think
And that's where the
the
some
question.
capacity comes in.
Because if
Doesn't have
there's,
to be salary.
if you've already budgeted and allocated in the 5,000 function for instructional, and I understand the ebb and the flow of all the staff, but at the end of the year, I don't think you've ever been overstaffed recently, that you were just well over your 5,000. And so when that happens, why not give it to the teachers who were already there doing the work, making up for the absence of those staff? Because I know at the end of the day, you've explained the money is what the money is. There's only so many humans doing the job. And at the end, and we know this with, support staff too, you just can't get the people at some point, right? But you have the money for it. And there are people in the classrooms doing the work. And so that's where it's a hard pill to swallow, that we're missing the staff, the teachers feel it, at the end of the year, there's the money for not paying them, and where's the money go? Bye, the
It
general
doesn't go
fund.
bye-bye.
No, not like that. It
We
goes
did not
by,
have a retirement increase this year.
it goes
We
bye
do
bye.
not know year to year what that retirement increase is gonna be. We've had it as much as,
So you're building in the
Two-
last salary rolling over?
not necessarily, but
No,
my
but-
point being is we can't foresee what the legislature is going to do in a session. So
Oh, I
we need
completely
the
agree
reserve
with
to
you.
know
Yes, I
what is
completely
gonna
agree with you,
happen.
but your reserves cannot be fed
Mm.
by unhired teachers putting more work on the
No, because
teachers
if it
here.
got
It
to that
gets
point,
fed
there'd be
from
staffing cuts
everywhere, right? Everywhere in the budget that there's a little over or under, it evens out, and you have what you have. I hear what you're saying.
But you also
So
have
you
to
have to think of
recognize,
what teachers see, which is the staffing's missing. They feel that, and the money was allocated for that already. And you said you're prepared to hire all the teachers. So you're prepared to compensate for that amount of work that's being done in that school year. At the end of the year, the work was done, and you're paying a fraction of what it is every single year, every year. And so the question here now is, can you not give it back in some capacity? You already said you pay teachers for it. Sorry, you couldn't hire them. It is not their fault. Am I crazy here?
The part you're missing, I think, though, is when it rolls back into the fund balance, we're then use that to determine based on any increase we receive from the legislature, which may be an increase and may not. All right, but then it helps account if there's not an increase and we have more expenses, or like she said, with the retirement goes up or healthcare goes up.
It's a one-time rollover. It's gonna be completely different the next year, right? Could be nothing next year. And so again, it's one-time funds. You're saying, great, we weren't, not great, but okay, we didn't hire these teachers and we have an extra million, great. We can spend it on what we need to. And I'm saying what you need to spend it on as a teacher, you already budgeted to spend it on in some capacity. Because I understand you're not gonna just say, okay, it's April, let's retroactively increase your salaries, because then next year, I understand that. But again, you already expected to spend this on instructional salaries, spend it on instructional salaries. Simple. I do not understand the counter argument for that on a year-to-year basis. I don't.
Okay.
And I don't think anyone in the room does either, based on the feeling I'm having right now. So,
Chris,
Rocky.
I'm here. All
I
right,
feel it.
but no, what I'm saying is I'm here, but we're gonna be respectful of each other, and I don't
Was
need,
that disrespectful? At some
I
point?
don't need. Anyway, let's just
We're having conversations here.
keep it that way. All
I
right,
agree.
thank you.
I think we
But I
have so
think-
far.
But I do think that it shows that.
I
there's
hear
a
your
in
point.
time. And I think that's all that we're asking for, is that you have an understanding that
Okay,
it would have been spent either way. If we were full
well,
staff.
but you also have to imagine that even with the staffing plan being the way it is, oftentimes we're spending a good portion of that money in subs or in sub-LESPA employees to offset the absence. So it's not like every single dollar that's missed is moving over into an account just sitting there. some portion of a dollar may be there, but it's not the millions of dollars that you're.
That's fine. So at the end of the year, if you got 300,000 left in the instructional function that you didn't spend on subs, paraprofessional subs, teachers, divide up the 300,000. I'm not getting this concept of that money's not yours anymore because we couldn't hire someone in the position. That's a disconnect I'm not getting. Whether it's 300,000, 3 million, doesn't matter. It's not yours. It was allocated to fund instructional staff in some capacity. Right, and so if you don't have teachers and you pay for a bunch of pairs to come in, that's helpful to the instructional concept. Or if you have subs, if you just keep the money and spend it on anything not instructional in the future, that's not helpful to the teacher doing the teaching.
Okay, you made your point.
Yeah, I think we're running in circles on this, so, all right. any
So
more?
we'll go ahead and just start presenting the rest of the language that we have. Go from there. Okay. We'll start with the employee authority.
Let's do 10. We'll get back to you.
Do you have documents to pass?
Yeah. Kim's
Yeah, I
gonna
already
pass
passed
it.
them before, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Did have to take it back.
All right, so for most people in the audience, it's gonna be real pedantic and you're gonna be like, oh, this is 30 minutes, but when it matters, this will matter to you. This is procedure for like when discipline is happening. I will now go back to address the party. So the format is different. Ignore the colors from our typical scene. I went and just edited from the current contract, not from your proposal. And my intent was to accept most of what you proposed. I added on some other stuff from some other contracts, which I think are mutually agreeable anyway. I'm just gonna slowly go through and try to point out. The main thing I think is you wanted to get rid of our existing D, which was like, we gotta make a case to you in 3 days. It was very hurried. And you replaced it with this huge body of 3 different things, a notice of proposed action, taking the action, or the predetermination conference, and a notice of final action. So I overwhelmingly just took all of your language for that. So let me start, let's see. So the one thing I did not really understand in your proposal, so it's not in here, is you called it progressive and or cumulative discipline. Is there a meaningful difference to adding cumulative?
Yeah, it means that you don't have to be charged with the same thing in order to progress. That's the difference between cumulative. So like in some instances, you may have a person who has a progressive disciplinary history of one particular violation. Then they do something that is pretty egregious, but it's something
Totally
else.
different.
You don't have to start back at a first written warning with that issue. You move to the next step with cumulative.
Okay.
Does the language not already allow that by speaking to the fact that you could go to a different level depending on the severity of the issue?
I think that the point here is to clarify that it doesn't have to follow the same exact charge, because one could make the claim that this is a new claim, this is a new charge, and we should be starting at the very beginning. In each
Okay,
instance.
I will consider that. I'll consider that. All right, and so I think you had taken out verbal warning from the bullets at the top and added in the termination. So I kept the termination, but somewhere else it's referred to as discharge. So we just should, whatever it is consistent.
Yep.
And then I left in verbal warning because we all understand here what's happening, but I think it's helpful certainly for the bargaining unit, but for principals to give them a reminder when they go to the contract, let's talk to them first, if we thought of that, because too often they're not doing that, and they need as much help as they can get, so we just want to do that. Okay, so for the notice of proposed action and this kind of stuff, the only things I really added in was that, so if you read D1A on the first page, the employee shall be provided written notice of proposed action by personal delivery, and I've added with written documentation of receipt obtained. So just say some evidence that you presented that. I know we advise people not to sign stuff, so maybe your principal signing, they refuse to sign, but that way there's some documentation on your end that yes, we did deliver it to them personally. I kind of wanted it to be by email, but I realized that you sometimes restrict their emails and you don't have their personal emails necessarily, right? And so do you have a way to, is that correct? You don't have everyone's, so it really has to be in-person certified mail. Do I know what else? So I think for B, I pretty much accepted everything. Now I struck what is 5 here because I appreciate that and I like it, but I would say that is like with like promises, and I just want the language in the contract that shows you're going to do this, which is kind of what we're doing now anyways, right? You made some proposals to make it better. And so just so the group, it says that superintendent and the board, they really don't want to make an error and accidentally impose discipline. And so they just want a statement in there saying all that, but let's just show it with the process, which I think is what we're kind of engaging in now. We still want you to advise people of right to representation. We didn't adjust that anywhere in here. I understand the argument. I don't think it really aligns with how the wording is exactly in other places in this, that it's like currently how it's worded, you're supposed to advise the employee if the conversation could lead to discipline. I don't think the language actually says that. It's more when you're summoned to the principal's office for a meeting, they have to advise that, right? And so I don't know that stopping in the hallway for a random conversation, the contract says they have to do that. I also don't know that we've had an issue like that, because the issue would come in, right, where we're trying to, the principal's using something, they got in a conversation with an employee, and we're going to say, well, they, had Weingarten rights, they broke the contract, you didn't tell them they were under investigation. I don't know that that's really happened where you've tried to assert a fact that we've said doesn't come into play because of that. So I don't know that we want to just say, don't tell anyone about the representation unless they're getting fired. So that's kind of where we're at on that. We want to leave it in to advise them for representation, even at a lower level. If they're going to the principal's office for what may be a verbal warning, they should still kind of know they're in the progressive discipline at start, right? This is not friendly sit down, how is a football game? This is how is a football game? We had 8 parents complain because you sent out a weird email or something like that during, right? So that's where we're at on that. Otherwise, let's see. I struck out somewhere it said normally during regular business hours. Right, so it's in B4 for notice of proposed action. It said that the notice, anyways, will meet normally during regular business hours. I struck the normally because you're just meeting during business hours. I don't think that you're going to be asking to have meetings at 5, 6, 7 p.m. for this kind of stuff, and it wouldn't be appropriate. The main things I changed were, let's see, the addition of, and the notice of final action, you'll see is kind of bigger than what you had proposed. But I mainly added in, is it C? And so this is that in the case of a recommendation of suspension without pay or discharge, the notice shall advise the employee on the date and time for the school board's consideration of the recommendation. Okay. Okay, we've had some issues where we're not really sure when it's going up to the board. I swear I saw it appear on a board doc, and the next day it was not on that board doc. Okay. Anyway, we want to know, the member, the teacher wants to know, when do I go to the school board to fight my livelihood? Not about, is it the next meeting? They want like the date that they're going to need to be present for that. So within 5 days following the school board's action on the recommendation, the employee shall receive in writing by personal delivery with written documentation of receipt obtained or by certified mail, return receipt requested, the result of the school board's action. And so I think this is missing as well, where you've been given a notice of termination, it goes to the board, they may or not even know when it's going to the board. The board typically votes unanimously on personnel actions in my experience. So I'm assuming the termination has gone through, but the person hasn't received any notice that that's happened. And this is, we'll get better with these changes, but principals don't have authority to suspend or terminate, right? Only the school board can do that. And so a lot of the language is really confusing to people, that they're like, I was terminated. I'm like, no, you're recommended for termination to the school board. There's a process, all this kind of stuff. And so that's where we really want them to know when action has actually been taken. Okay, the employee shall be permitted to submit relevant information personally and by witness orally and in writing. And then I struck what you all had put in there, which was with the privilege being reserved by the superintendent's disciplinary designee to give that information such weight as he or she deems proper. I think you're gonna do that. What's in the contract? I don't think we need to like waive that explicitly to you. You're gonna do it and we'll fight if we think those weights were correct, right? So I think that's just a little beyond what we need. And then E was the other addition, which says if the superintendent or his or her designee issues a notice of final action, which issues no discipline, because the whole point is it's a process. And like the paragraph I don't want in there, you want to give everyone a fair shake and don't want extra erroneous discipline. And so if there was a mistake and there is no discipline, then none of this should really appear in the person's. So those were all the substantive changes, I think.
Okay, quick clarification, Chris.
Yeah.
Would this be for suspensions and dismissals?
Yes.
Okay, so for written reprimand,
That's what you
This is what I
proposed.
proposed.
Right, yeah, I think,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
This is
Because
for
D,
more
because
appealable
that's all that
conduct.
D referred to before. I'm using like 4 different versions.
but we
Yeah, because D was if corrective action for discipline in the form of.
written reprimand,
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
right? So I just
yeah.
want to make that distinction that this is for
No, I think,
suspensions and,
Yeah, we've even been doing that for written reprimands on either side.
well, I've trained the principals. to
I
do
don't know
so.
if they're listening. But no, I hear it, because for the written, yeah, it's not really should be a whole procedure. for the
Correct.
written, So I think we'd be okay letting go the written.
Okay,
parts, yeah. Which was your intention when you proposed it, right?
correct.
And I still think the message is to, I mean, everything we're saying here is true for every level. You don't even want to like have a verbal warning on it, knowing that they've done nothing wrong. We assume
Right.
principals and admins are doing some due diligence, right, before they start approaching any level of the
Absolutely.
discipline. And so we don't need all this formal framework for a verbal warning, counting
Right.
memorandum or letter. of
I mean, I think
reprimand.
that's what we're getting at is
Yeah.
for those more severe actions that
Yeah.
happen, that occur after a written reprimand. You want to have a more
A
formal
good
process,
framework that we
very
can
good
all
framework
follow.
with due process and all that built in. And I think that, you know, with this, it's just going to take, like, I want to make sure that we have some time to go through and like, especially given the fact that it's in a little bit different format, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Make sure that
yeah.
we're fully,
Well, this is in the
Considering
current
it all.
format.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I'll
what
send
I say is,
you- Yeah.
what
and
we
your
normally do
proposal-
is
Yeah,
compare it against the proposal and then, you know, see where the changes are and go from there.
Yeah.
But it's encouraging to me, to be honest with you, that we're, you know, we're working together to try and make this a better process. right?
yeah. I mean, well, since we are already working together doing this stuff behind the scenes, like us four, so we understand what needs to change to work for everybody, because we're all working through the process.
I think
yeah.
this will help.
No, I appreciate that you brought it forward, because it's one of those things where like, we know we have to do it, but it is not a sexy topic to get into, right?
Mhm.
And so I appreciate taking the effort to rewrite all of the, and it was more or less very full stuff.
Thank you.
Let me know if you have
Yeah,
anything
we'll
else.
be-
And I'll send you this version. It's the last version Diana sent me of the contract. I just edited directly into that.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. That's 10.
All right, since 10 wasn't sexy enough, we're bringing out 7. There's your copy.
Absolutely.
It's your choice.
I think that's what we're.
Alrighty, we're ready for 7.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we're going back into it.
Okay.
Alrighty, so looking at 7.01, we're looking at 3A. We've talked about this consistently about the lunch period. Our proposal back is lunch period no less than 25 consecutive minutes starting in the 25-26 academic year. So the idea behind that is right now it might not be feasible to get the 25-minute lunches in. But if we have between when we agree upon this language till the start of next school year to figure out the reworking of some of our school sites that are not meeting this, we should be able to implement this. 3B, we've agreed to that language. 3B, 1I, we've agreed to that language. Going down to the employee work week, on the second page, we've talked a little about the work remote policy as of right now. I appreciate the offer. Our group appreciates the offer of the 2 additional paid planning day or paid holidays. And so we'll take that into consideration. This was written, obviously prior to getting together tonight. So we are reproposing the work remote language with the same discussion that we had earlier in the evening in regards to that. Okay. Flipping right along here to page 4. We've agreed to 7.03B. We've looked at D and we've reworded it slightly. No more than a total of 6.5 hours of district-wide in-service as authorized by the superintendent shall be held on designated planning days during a school year. Just some additional clarification, down from 7.5 to accommodate for the hour lunch break that is usually given on a planning day. That's where that comes from. So if it were to be on a whole day, it would not end up being.
I get it, but when you count a full day, it's 7.5, we're gonna break it up. We can do so and still get credit for the full 7.5 hours if we break it up. If we just say 6.5, then it also takes it away from those days when we are splitting them.
So then does the language need to read no more than a total of 7.5 hours of non-consecutive?
Yeah, I mean, it could, but I think we've already got it in contract that we know that whenever we're doing a planning day, that they get an hour lunch. I think that already comes into play. I don't think it's necessary, but it's a consideration.
So I guess the issue is the 2 half days. If you did a half day, you still had to account for lunch in the other half of the day. So it would have been out of 6.5 hours, not 7.5 hours.
But
so,
yeah, I mean, but we can do 3.5 in one day. We could do 4 in the other, and not still get the full 7.5 hours.
I know, but if you keep it current contract language, you only get 3.5 hours. You only get half the day regardless. There's still lunch, an hour lunch, so it would be 6.5 total hours.
I understand your argument. I don't think that you're understanding my argument, but we'll definitely consider it and come back.
Thank you. Go.
All right, so 7.04, we're looking at comp time, but we're on page 5. Number 4, teacher-led parent conferences, right? That falls into the comp time category. We crossed out PTO. Now that we got the supplement in your supplement proposal, I think that balances that out fairly. B, all unused comp time earned except for a comp leave as outlined in 7.01A3BI will expire 1 calendar year from the date and time it was earned. And then we've striked, we're gonna go through that again. The rest of that sentence.
Hold on a second.
I can keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I'm just trying to make sure that I understand and don't have a question about what you.
Gotcha.
You're moving quickly on a document that is very detailed. So
I just thought we'd gone over it so many times.
oh yeah. But there's colors are not very pretty.
That's right.
Am I good to go to 7.05?
You are.
Okay, meetings, we're looking at A3. I guess if we want to start at 2, it's all been agreed to. 3, modification of striking standard or extended workday, just one, which extends the workday by more than 1/2 hour. So very similar to what it was, just a little bit of cleanup. B, bringing back required meetings shall be compensated at the employee's hourly rate for those district meetings that extend beyond.
You're just re-proposing that again.
Re-proposing it. All right, moving forward to 7.08, health and safety. This was language that we previously had agreed to, so we kept it as green. Looking at classroom supplies, 7.10. B, we've agreed to. C, we've put in some additional language and similar to what we've previously proposed. But it should be administered in according with the state law. Funds equal to the Florida Teacher Classroom Supply Assistance Program shall be provided to employees that work directly with students but are not covered by the state program. So we have some additional folks that fall into that category that have already been receiving funds, but just make sure they continue to do so.
And I just wanted to add in, last time, I think someone said that that money was impermissible to bargain, which is true. We're not bargaining that. We're bargaining money for the people who are not getting that. And so that is permissible because we're not touching the actual fund.
Yeah, we were referring to the actual money.
We took some of the language out to make it.
I understand this.
Yes. Moving right along, 7.14, the language that we had presented from your proposal earlier in the evening is acceptable at this point, so we're just gonna move past that, okay? 7.16, we've agreed to B. 7.17, we've agreed to C. 7.18, we've agreed to. 7.19. We have reproposed the splitting class language. We know that it's happening at school sites as much as it's been tried to tamper it down, avoid it. It's still happening. And so what compensation can be provided for those folks? Would you like me to read the language or very
Is it
similar?
the same? Is it the same exact language that was proposed previously? Yes.
Yeah. We think it's that special.
Already built into the budget.
Do we have any questions? Any questions? Bill, any questions? No, this would change. Any questions? No, we're good. We can move to 8.
Yeah, it's next.
Making sure I understand. It was kind of like a.
I know, I went through 7 a little fast, but I thought we kind of hashed it over, you know, we've talked about it.
No, that's why I stuck around. Come on.
Goodness.
Yeah, sure. We think there's some changes in here, like this idea, this, but these are some of the proposals, but this one specifically. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
So just to start off on 8, there's still an issue with class size. It was in the top 5 that we had on the issues of our survey. Class sizes are in certain classes are just really, really large. And, especially in some small spaces in some certain schools where they're a little bit older. And understand that we want to accommodate for what the student needs are, but at the same time, that workload is disparate to what other people are dealing with. And I know there's been this idea that, well, if you only had like 12 kids in one class and 40 in another, then it averages out. That there aren't many cases where this is taking place, and it doesn't average out. That hour with 40 kids is a completely different world. And so when we kind of they just need to be reasonable. Okay, they need to be comparable. It doesn't need to be identical. We need to figure out a way, because what it does is it creates the haves and have-nots again, where AP Bio is treated completely different than the regular Gen Biology or the lowest level algebra versus whatever algebra honors, those kinds of things. So we just want to make sure that you understand that it came back in the survey with 50% of the folks in this district basically saying it's top 5 for us right now. Class size is too large. And so that's part of the reason that we want to make sure they're comparable. 8.02, we had already had the discussion. We believe that, given that everyone has a Chromebook, and I remember the arguments that were said on the other side, we which is why we want to get this moved over to virtual. It was already stated that it was virtual language pretty much, but at the end of the day, this idea that we're gonna have a computerized models have more than 3 preps. That means then everyone could have more than 3 preps because they have a Chromebook and they're doing some form of digital instruction. And so we need to get this under control. That is for virtual school. That is not for the regular classroom setting. The other piece is we would like to add that no employee shall be required to teach a hybrid model of instruction. As it is right now, if a student is out for a day or two, there's some cases where they're asking the teacher to record themselves and teach at the same time that they're teaching the students in their classroom, because the administrator really wants to make sure the kid doesn't miss out on the instruction. Now, understandable, we want to do all that we can, but if everyone remembers what hybrid was.
Choking them up.
It'll have to do for now. Looking for a different. But the idea is, I think we can all agree, those of us that remember COVID, no hybrid. So we just want to codify it. The last piece, 8.06. Because we can't do anything with the case loads right now, the only other option that we have. Take over.
It's just been so hard for him. Okay, so ESE teachers and service providers shall receive 15 hours of comp time each quarter, or a proportional amount compared to a full-time 7.5 hour day. And so this comes from, remember, this packet used to be much longer with all of the caseload caps information. Instead of, we know that that's not a capability right now. As a trade-off for that is this additional comp time to help compensate some of those folks that are doing all these additional workloads as regards to ESE.
In addition to the 1 day, or in addition to the 4 days a year for,
This would be time off. The planning would be used, at a school site to do their planning.
so the 4 days per year are used to help write IEPs and things like that. We agreed that they could do multiple in the 9 weeks, no more than 2 consecutive. So this is in addition to those 4 days.
Yes.
Because we have, and I'm sure we could have some speech language with Pat, so I'll just talk, but 140 cases for one person. It's super, 149, sorry, add 9 more. It's super high. And it really isn't what's best for kids at the end of the day. So something has to be done to go ahead and reduce those. And if we're not going to reduce it.
So is there something like you talked about with the supplements that you would put in writing what you have to qualify? You have to have 149, or you have to have 97, or I mean, what do you have to qualify for this, or any ESE teacher or provider?
Well, I would say we provided 2 pages of complex numbers explaining all this stuff, but it was too much of a lift to like get that worked out. And so we reverted to a more simpler to manage model for that. So
just to speak to that, I mean, I appreciate the level of detail that went into it. And to be honest with you, I mean, I thought it was really a good model. The fact of the matter is that we did a comparison and costed out based on the staffing plan, and at just 2 high schools. So you look at Leon and you look at Childs, it costs over $600,000 in 1 year to do it. So it doesn't really have anything at all to do.
No, but see, no, so the thing I saw earlier was a dollar monetary amount per student that was over the class size.
Right.
That language is no longer in here.
Right. But what he's.
And all I'm asking is, with the comp time, if one SLP has 49 kids assigned or 70 kids assigned, and one has 140 kids assigned, they're treated the same.
in this language, yeah.
Okay.
But we're open to counters.
Yeah, I'm
The
just-
old language weighted by also like 254, like everything, right? So maybe we swung hard too much in the other direction.
Really.
My point was only that it was not that we didn't
So-
value the detail.
Yeah,
It
sorry
was,
if I missed
you
on
know.
that. So maybe I misunderstood previously. So you did the full analysis on that, and just the cost was overwhelming of that on that particular.
Well, not just the cost. I mean, we looked at some of the people that would benefit the most, and I don't think it was your intention, but some physical education classes may have 40 or 50, 45 kids in them. You know, those people were going to be the biggest beneficiary of that model if it's the way it was set up. And so.
So there's two things. There's the class size part and then there's the caseloads. This is
Yeah.
primarily on caseloads.
Okay.
This particular.
Yes.
Okay, the other thing where it talks about course preparations. So we have, especially in high schools, a number of courses that have multiple courses embedded in one class period. Like, let's use Latin as an example. There may be Latin 4, Latin 5, and
There's like
Eight.
4 preps in one class.
in
5, there we go.
right. Right. And so in this language, that would not then be allowed for at all? Is that what you're saying?
No, this is talking about,
Just ESC teachers and ESC service providers specifically.
no, she's talking
No,
about.
the
No, it says
compare
up
plus.
here that-
8.02.
Yeah, that's specific to computerized instruction.
But it says teachers assigned primarily to
Traditional
traditional classes shall have no
instruction.
more than 3 different course preparations.
So that's,
But they're
Yeah,
not
so
proposing.
what changes, so that person should file a grievance, they're over 3 preps.
And that, like, so for example, the part-time Latin teacher at Leon,
Okay, I got
But
it.
he's full-time, because he does part-time.
I got it.
and Part-time at.
I got it.
but he still has more than 3 preps.
Correct, and he should.
Okay,
Okay, and but we don't have enough students for him to be full-time if he doesn't have multiple preps during the period. So he could have 4 kids in first period for Latin 4.
I'm just telling you the language you
Okay.
already have in the
Okay,
contract.
I
This
got
is what you've already.
All right.
agreed to.
Yeah, we got you, Scott.
Okay.
And I think that, the part that you guys have responded to is just the computerized learning aspect.
Yeah,
I feel like
to
it needs to
move
be
that out.
virtual. The only question I would pose back is, if at some point in time, the more we move into the digital age, the more prevalent this kind of teaching may become, and absent a virtual program. So if it's moved into the virtual program and it becomes much more the norm, and the virtual aspect sort of goes away, well, then so does this language. So I mean, that's why our position was that this is a more of a generalized language that doesn't just need to apply to the virtual program.
I don't understand what you're saying. You gotta say it differently. What do you mean that it's going?
I'm not saying anything with regard to the virtual program other
No,
than.
no, I'm not saying that, but
You're saying regular education eventually will be
Well,
computerized.
What we're saying is the language that you're taking out is those assigned to use instructional delivery models such as computerized instructions may have more than 3 course preparations. You're saying that is specifically related to virtual school. And what I'm saying is that
you
it's
guys
not.
said it was. When we brought it up at the session 2 or 3
No.
sessions ago, someone said that was
Oh,
part of.
no.
Shane did.
Well, that's what I said the last time related to this language, and the language and why we wanted to keep it in here is it may be directly related to virtual now, but it's not just related to virtual.
Uh-huh.
And the fact of the matter is to just lump it under there totally takes it out of the consideration for other models that are not virtual.
Right, we don't want to do hybrid.
Well, I understand you don't want to do hybrid.
Well,
But-
that's what that's saying.
But at some point,
That's what that's
we
saying.
may all be
We're not
required
doing
to do
that.
hybrid again.
Well,
And
then
that makes
we'll
it
have
virtual.
And
to,
I don't want to.
Yeah.
we'll have to go for that.
And all I'm getting at is that computerized, so the computerized, the nature of these contracts are such that if we agree to something, we can never unilaterally take it out.
Oh
You
my
guys
gosh.
have agreed, you guys have,
COVID happened
you guys
and
have
I was
agreed to
there
this
and
language.
We sat here and did that during COVID. We can do it during any year.
We were
Right
one of the
now,
first
this year,
districts to
we're
have
saying
that.
we're not doing hybrid.
Okay, I'm not speaking about hybrid. I'm just talking about the language above that,
Okay,
that you guys previously agreed to. Not solely in the context of virtual, okay? And all we're saying is that it doesn't just apply to virtual, and that's why we're against moving it to virtual.
So the argument on our side is that as we move towards a more computerized model, what would stop the district from claiming all classes are a computerized model now? Therefore, everybody can have more than 3 preps. Because I would
I
argue,
understand that. I understand that argument, but
I would argue that the digital models of learning, while are beneficial in some ways, create a lot of learning barriers when you are troubleshooting computers all day long.
Mhm.
And so in addition to 3 preps, you're doing all the computer troubleshooting, if we're gonna call them all computerized models.
So can we just, we'll
Yeah.
talk about this. when we get
100%.
there.
Yeah, so that's the reason we re-proposed it outside of striking it down into LCVS was because the comment was made that it was a virtual school language. We said, oh, okay, let's just move it to there. That's how kind of that's
but
happened
that's
outside
what,
of
but, and that's
administration.
what I'm getting at here is the last time we brought it back, even though you may have interpreted it as Shane saying delivery is just virtual school, that's when we brought it back, said it's not just virtual school. That's why we brought it back and re-proposed it back to you. It was just like the 3rd or 4th time we've gone over this language. We'll discuss it more. In the fact that you brought the additional context outside of just it being more appropriate for virtual school is meaningful. So we appreciate it.
What do you want? You want to know that? Oh, okay. Yeah,
Just
let's
to say a little thing about the caseload, class size stuff. I appreciate the new information brought today. I think previously the understanding from everyone was that it was just too complicated and that was it. And so it's appreciated it was costed out, and Rocky's comment that it would impact PE teachers more than others, and we may not know that. We may not know that it's bargaining. Don't say no to us, give us counter proposals. And I think historically I've not gotten any of this information even. It sounds like you had some discussions, which is fine, but a lot of it did not make it back to the table. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was just like it's too complicated and that was it.
Yeah, last session, because obviously this is an issue near and dear to me, right? So I remember, last session, it was said that it was too complicated. And so you guys were not able to cost it out, but what was just shared at the table to me and my recollection contradicts what was shared last time. And that's what I think Chris remembered as well.
I'll recharacterize that as supplementing what you said last time.
Just giving more information, sure.
Okay. And so anyways, my point is we appreciate that and we would like to see more of that. And so it's less no, and it's more like, well, we looked at it and it's complicated for this reason and this reason, want to take another stab or something. That it comes off a lot better than too complicated no. And we've had this for over a year, I think. Right? I think it's 2 years. Yeah.
No, it's been
2 years.
proposed in first.
And so maybe I'm wrong, so definitely correct me if that's.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I was waving at someone back there telling me not to.
100%. It doesn't do any good to go back and forth about, so we have dug into this information. It is complicated, but like we said, sometimes the detail is good. What we've always seen from the surface is that how the numbers add up.
Yeah.
To millions and millions of dollars. And so what we did do is take the opportunity subsequently to go back and say, okay, what does it add up to? And it didn't take us far to realize exactly what we anticipated. When you're talking about, our proposal, our compensation proposal is it's limited. That's what we know we have, right? And then on top of that, you're going to have all of these other millions of dollars spent. It's just sometimes things aren't realistic.
No, I'm not even trying to have a back and forth. I'm trying to say this was a good example of what we expect at the bargaining table, where I think sometimes it gets lost for whatever reason as like, oh, we just can't do that, where we would appreciate all the information you brought today a year ago or whenever you came across the information. Because yeah, we don't know what we don't know. It's bargaining, just like you don't know what you don't know about what members are saying and stuff. And so we meet here to exchange information, to reach a resolution. If we don't have all the information, it's harder to do. That's all.
Okay, we're gonna move into 16.
We're skipping 12.
As far as.
It's West. Are we skipping 12?
Are we skipping 12?
Oh, did I skip
12? I don't have 12. I don't have 12 at all.
We're gonna send you, yeah,
it's current contract.
right, back to kindergarten, no numbers.
I can find out right now.
We're gonna skip 12 right now, and we're gonna go to 16. All righty. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, I'll take it. All right, so
So what we did was we took a look at your proposal for continuity in the classroom instruction, which was F. Just for formatting purposes, I switched it to 1 and then A's after it, so you could cite specific lines about the different categories that came below. The only changes that we made were that it would be for people with 3 years of continuous service and above, because most of our teachers that start in first year, you know, the idea is that they make it 3 to 5 years, and the goal is to get some of those people to not use the time. We noticed that a lot of folks are going through their days and you want continuity within the classroom. So we thought 3 years would be reasonable. At the same time, an employee must have a minimum of not 60, but 15 days of accumulated sick leave, payment of unused sick leave under the section, 60 days. My goodness, especially if people are having families and stuff and you have sick kids and stuff, ain't nobody gonna be able to get to some of these levels. So we thought 15 was a reasonable amount. And then down below for the parameters of payment are as follows. An employee who accepts payment for accrued sick leave shall be eligible to participate in the employee sick leave pool when they have 15 days of accumulated sick leave. Meaning that if you were 3 years of service and you had the 15 days and you bought some of them back, that you would have to earn some days before you could get back into the sick leave pool, but not to be ostracized from the sick leave pool forever. You know, there should be a reasonable amount of leave that you have accrued. And rather than at 60%, 75% of the employees based off the 7.5 hours. So in principle, the concept is agreeable. It's just that it's unusable by the vast majority of people the way that it was currently or first presented. So we tried to make it more accessible so that folks would see the benefit of it. When it comes to bereavement leave, we've agreed in principle to the increase. Thank you for recognizing what many folks have to go through when they lose somebody. As far as the paid parental leave, we did not put it green. It's your language as it was. We did not change anything. The idea was that we haven't decided on what salary increase was, what the impact would be, but it's not saying that we're opposed to what the language is. It's just, you know, we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to find out what the salary proposal of the district was before we said, yes, we're going to go ahead with the parental leave portion the way that it was written.
So there are a few concerns under the parental leave that I'd like to put out in the open. That way we are reconsidering or looking at this. As far as the leave needing to be taken immediately after the birth for the father, right? Not the mother. A lot of times the benefit of having a paternal leave is the idea that if the mother gets 8 weeks or 6 weeks, then the father can come in on that back half and take over for a little bit longer before a child has to start daycare, right? So both parents can go back to work. So the idea that they would need to be used either one after another or immediately at the time of birth might be a little bit counterintuitive for specifically to the paternal aspect. And then the other concept of concern is that if they are a 2-employee household, they would each only then get 4 weeks. That doesn't even cover a mother's recovery, right? If they're shortened down to 4 weeks of paid leave when the recovery at minimum is 6 weeks. So that would be the concern there is the effort is there on the language that is in here, but just a few minor tweaks and consideration upon when this can be used, and the idea of maybe it not being used consecutively could also be beneficial for when a child is out. If we're giving somebody 8 weeks, more than likely the mother's going to use all those 8 weeks consistently as part of their recovery process, but a father could help itemize that out a little bit more to help cover the sick days and things of that nature if it does not have to be used immediately at the time of birth. So those are some considerations in regards to the parental leave.
Any questions about that? Yeah. 1627, employee childcare. When it comes down to this is just exactly what was proposed before. This is something that I think that, if you think about it, allows teachers to focus on their classrooms, the meetings they need to go to, the students, the different things that take place. And whether or not it's thought that way, it could be built into the system that's already there. You know, by figuring out, calculating, you know, what the estimated cost is, offsetting the estimated costs, figuring out how to pay for it, but. Again, something that people have said that they were very concerned about and would like to know.
So just for clarification, is this going back to 16.27, going back to your original proposal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the thing is, if you got a counter, we'll take the counter, but I mean, I think the proposal's pretty straightforward. Was there any cost analysis by the district on this?
Yes.
Like the other one?
We costed it, just for the current participation, which we expect the participation to maybe double,
Mhm.
$700,000. So, I mean, it's a significant cost.
Okay, so you're,
That 700,000 is current or what you predict?
No, it's our current participation,
Right.
people who have kids in our programs, we go and pay their full amount, $700,000,
of just teachers' kits.
full participation of all of our employees.
Oh, okay, so
All
all of your
employees,
employees.
Yes,
You know, the fraction of the bargaining unit.
I don't. But we do anticipate that it would increase based on the fact that,
It's free.
yeah, it's free.
All right, we're gonna move
No,
into,
this is current.
okay. He's gonna move into Article 12,
Current contract plan.
current contract language, that's why we don't have it.
But, okay,
Here, here, here.
you know, we've had these conversations on numerous occasions. I'm just not understanding why, even with the, you know, we've proposed language that is really in line with the requirements for individuals to become a teacher. I mean, essentially, you know, we can't make someone a teacher who does not meet the requirements for the teacher job. So if we have a,
We're not saying they are a teacher.
well, what you're saying is,
Saying
we're
like-
saying is like, okay, this is a group of people that's not even in your bargaining. You're
Correct.
saying that you're required, that you want to say, okay, if they're in a position more than 21 days, that we've got to pay them like a teacher.
So
It just doesn't make any sense. That
it
we're
may not
willing
make
to be
sense to you,
reasonable.
but the reason for it is the fact that, as what's already kind of been explained, is that when the regular classroom teacher is not provided and a substitute is, you know, put in the place, and that substitute may be the substitute for the year, right? It has happened at school sites where it's been multiple months where the person was the teacher of record, because there was no teacher of record. That if we allow it to be that they have to meet certain X requirements, then what's to keep the district to not fill positions and just get subs to reduce a cost? That's a budgetary piece. And then, because really at the end of the day, it should be a certified teacher. We should be working, we want the urgency to get a certified teacher in that classroom. And if the financial commitment to it of a substitute getting paid as the teacher, that is one of the things that we hope would create some urgency to get someone that is certified in that classroom rather than.
I don't know.
Yeah, but that's.
I don't know a case where we have a sub in a class and we have a qualified teacher and we go, you know, to save money, we're just gonna keep the sub over there and not hire this qualified teacher. I mean,
But also too, that's a counterintuitive to the argument you said a minute ago. We were talking about whatever lap salary we have, At the end of the year, you want to give back the bonuses. Well, if you want us to pay the subs now as teacher pay, that just reduces the money that's left over.
So you're
the
saying
bonus.
bonuses, or you're agreeing to bonuses?
No, I'm not saying that.
That's what I heard.
It's completely consistent with
That's what
what
I
you
heard
said.
you say.
Hold on, everyone calm down. It's 100% consistent. What we have said is pay the people who are doing the work in the classroom what they deserve to get paid. So if an alien showed up and looked at that classroom and saw a certified teacher 1 year and a sub who's been subbing for 10 years instructing a random class, they may not know the difference, right? And so there's certainly an argument about certifications, of course. There's also an argument for if you're in the same place doing the same job, you should be making similar amounts potentially, right? And so it's completely consistent with what we're saying, to pay the teachers, no matter what, that is not your money to take back. That's the message.
All right. Is that it for 12?
So, that's
Right.
21. Wait, is it 21? Yeah,
It's
21.
fine.
You want a sneak peek? We just started. Hey, give it a green.
Can we stop it?
I think I have 4 to do.
Running them off, come on. My husband's lost the battle.
Huh?
Looks like they're just bringing.
So.
Did it.
So based off of your proposal for Article 21, you know, we understand the rationale behind it. You know, God forbid anyone has to go through it and the impact it's gonna have on their families and their life and everything, so. All right, it's green.
Hey, we got one. All right.
There's a lot of green on.
There's a bunch of green in there everywhere.
Yeah, but you know what? And unfortunately, once we realized this, we made the change immediately. I mean, it's just the right thing to do for our people. So, and like you said, heaven forbid someone has to experience that. All right, what's next?
So we're basically at 8 o'clock right now.
Mhm.
I would argue, let's give us a chance to circle back on your counters. Let's try and get back to the table soon.
Yeah. We would like to do it sooner than later, I'm sure, as everyone would. So whether or not that's a potential before Thanksgiving next week or not, you know, our team is ready to get back to the table. So.
We can talk to the group and see what we can make work.
Okay.
And, I'll circle back to you on a date as soon as possible.
Okay.
How come we don't bring water and snacks? We don't get water and snacks.
There's no money.
Dr. Gale
Keep saying you want
Gabby
raises.
saying
You say that, but
We got the water fountain.
true.
Well,
At least you're
I offered it to Wallace. He didn't trust it.
I
thought it was late. Anyway,
Hey,
framing of the offer was, even I was like.
Wallace is just kind of.
It's a good offer, Wallace.
but before we go and everything, I understand that the biggest hiccup right now and the primary concern of everyone is salary.
Yeah.
And I know that as a district, we are at a tipping point from what you're saying. I will tell you, every time that AFR comes back, it is not a tipping point at the drasticness that is the actual budget proposal. The proposal itself does not match what the AFR is showing later on in September. Just, it's not. And so at the end of the day, that annual financial review and the monies that roll over from the lap salary, if it is something that we go ahead and figure out a process there, maybe there is a pathway forward. It's just a matter of, you know, I know what's gonna happen. We're gonna propose it and then it's gonna be, well, we can't do it. And then what does that mean? When everybody is like, we need more and there is no more, or not another thing that we can do to show the commitment that these folks have. And my greatest concern is that there are often times where we think about the 5% that may not be doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we forget about the 95% that are running through walls to help these kids all the time. And you can say no, but it has a perception of that a lot of times we deal with the least common denominator than trying to lift and be a little bit more of, we want this district to be the top district in the state. In order to be the top district in the state, you need the top teachers in the state. Period. So that's our shared goal. You know, when we come back with our proposal, we'll see what we can do. But what I do request is, of the instructional salaries that are, and I know you're gonna say, you don't divide them up as to which bargaining unit. But if we could at least get the values of the rollover that is directly from those salaries to get a picture of what seems to be the average mean rollover every single year. I think that would be helpful as part of a counter that we might be able to come up.
All right. Okay. All right, thank you very much, y'all. Have a good night. We'll be back in touch soon.